All right. So, I think we can safely say that spring is here. This day truly feels like spring. Don't you agree, Tupper? We're getting there. It's finally here. You know, they say in spring it doesn't snow, which is something that makes me very enthusiastic about the concept of spring. So, it is a great, great pleasure to be gathered on this beautiful day. And we have a great announcement to make that really does fit with the theme of spring and all that we look forward to in spring. I want to first hold up my great Parks hat that Deputy Commissioner Liam Cavanaugh just gave me. I'm going to wear it proudly. All you Parkies, love that symbol. And our new commissioner will be wearing it proudly as well as he gets to work doing the work of the people for our parks. First, let me thank some of the folks who are here today. Our City Council Parks Chairman, Mark Levine. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank former Manhattan Borough President and someone who was a great mentor to Mitch Silver, Ruth Messenger. Thank you for being here. And I mentioned our great First Deputy Commissioner who has been acting in the capacity of Parks Commissioner, doing a great job, Liam Cavanaugh, and we're so glad he's going to be a part of this team going forward. Thank you, Liam. I want to thank, I always like to give credit where credit is due, the folks on our team who played a crucial role in this process, selecting our new Parks Commissioner, including our first Deputy Mayor, Tony Shoris, and my Chief of Staff, Laura Santucci. We know what we believe in when it comes to hiring. We've really been blessed to be able to find the best and the brightest, folks of tremendous capacity who are willing to give their lives to public service on the highest level here in New York City, people with progressive values, people who represented the diversity of the city. We've said time and time again, that's what we strive for. When we find it, we go for it. We bring in the right people. And today is an example of that kind of approach working once again. Now, we're in a site that speaks to these values as well, the values that we cared about in this process. Let me welcome State Senator Dan Squadron. Welcome. Because every decision we've made is about effectiveness and the ability to promote a progressive agenda, and that progressive agenda fits each and every department of city government. Fighting against inequality and creating opportunity is the work of every agency, certainly the Parks Department included. And this site is so important because more than 100 years ago, settlement house workers here on the Lower East Side, led by one of the city's true unsung progressive heroines, Lillian Wald, they founded the Outdoor Recreation League. Now, over 100 years ago, this was a radical and unprecedented act. They realized that children and families needed recreation they weren't getting. They realized it had to be done in an egalitarian manner, open to all. And they also, here in this neighborhood, confronted the reality of thousands and thousands of immigrant families, low-income families that had no opportunity for recreation, that had no green space, and were struggling. It was affecting their health and their well-being. They needed a safe place to play, to spend some time together. And these heroines said, regardless of whether it's been done before, we're going to do it now. And they pushed until the city government finally built a playground here. This was, here on this site, the first municipally constructed and maintained playground anywhere in the United States of America. It's an amazing achievement. We should celebrate the people who did that over 100 years ago. They had a progressive vision, and they were effective in getting the job done. And from those humble origins came a way of life, a way of thinking, something that became part of the DNA of this city, and certainly the DNA of the Parks Department. So the Parks Department for decades and decades had answered that call. Even when it wasn't easy, even when there weren't as many resources as we would have liked, they still made tremendous things happen for our children, for our families. And we have to continue that proud tradition. And we need someone who can do that for the realities of the 21st century and the new challenges we faced. And that's why today it's my great pleasure to introduce a leader who's going to deepen and broaden that heritage and carry it forward in our time. He is, of course, our new Parks Commissioner, Mitch Silver. Welcome, Mitch. I got to know Mitch. I got to understand his vision. And I can tell you, I don't use the word lightly, he is a visionary. He's someone who's devoted his career to thinking about where we need to go and then finding ways to get it done. He has a passion for fairness and equality, and he brings it to the work of government and understands that we have to ensure that parks and open spaces are available in every community and are well maintained in every community of this city. He has a commitment to innovation. He's thought about and achieved new ways, making sure we plan better, we find a way to sustain our efforts. He's thought about and acted on the crucial role of parks and the planning of parks in terms of public health, in terms of environmental sustainability. He's someone who understands the challenge of resiliency in an ever-changing climate dynamic and understands the important role that parks play in protecting New Yorkers from coastal storms and other realities that we face with our weather today. And he understands that for a park to be great, for it to work for our citizens, it has to be safe. The people have to be able to enjoy their green spaces without fear. Mitch Silver has the experience, he has the skill, he has the talent needed to make that vision a reality. Since 2005, he's been the Chief Planning and Development Officer for the city of Richmond, North Carolina. Richmond's in Virginia. Raleigh, North Carolina. I just moved Richmond. The city of Raleigh, North Carolina, which has been a booming city with tremendous planning challenges. Mitch has navigated them. He authored a plan there, 2030 Comprehensive Plan for Development, which focused largely on expanding parks and greenways, because he understands how central they have to be to the modern city. Before that, he was Deputy Director of the Office of Planning for Washington, D.C. He was the Business Administrator for the Township of Irvington, New Jersey. He's done a lot outside the boundaries of New York City, and he certainly understands how to deal with large, complex agencies. He's also had a national profile as president of the American Planning Association, and he served as a guest lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. So much of what he has done, his vision, his creativity, has been recognized nationally. But through and through, Mitch is a New Yorker. Born and raised in Brooklyn, attended our public schools, attended Pratt Institute. In fact, he was the first African-American elected president of Pratt's student government, a trailblazer in more than one way. He received his master's in urban planning at Hunter College. So he learned in this city, he grew in this city, and then he went to work first for the city's Department of City Planning, and then he worked on the staff of Borough President Ruth Messenger and did an extraordinary job in that time and working with community groups, particularly in northern Manhattan. He's produced parks and open space designs for our city that have been honored by the Municipal Arts Society and the New York League of Conservation Voters. One of the particularly proud efforts that Mitch worked on was playing a central role in formulating the Harlem-on-the-River plan, where he helped to take a site that was originally pegged for private sector development and turned it into a $20 million park. Mitch understands that our parks are our gyms, there are classrooms, there are recreation centers, there are commuter paths. They play so many roles in our lives. They're more and more important in terms of fostering healthiness and well-being and fighting obesity. Our parks really are central to so much of what we have to do. And we're committed to making sure that they work for all our people. You think about the Parks Department of New York City, it is extraordinary. It covers 29,000 acres of public lands, literally almost 14% of the entire city. No one is more qualified to usher in a new era of expanded access to our parks and sustainability for our parks than Mitch Silver. Mitch, welcome aboard. We are delighted you're joining this administration as our new Parks Commissioner. reset here.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, good afternoon. It's certainly a pleasure to come home. I can tell you, after the last 24 hours, I can say that New York really knows how to keep a secret.
Lockdown. It was a lockdown.
Thank you, Mayor. I am honored to be New York City's next Parks Commissioner. I am a true New Yorker, but I've spent the last 9 years in North Carolina, so please forgive me if I keep saying yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and good morning to everybody I see each day. As the mayor indicated, I was born to a very diverse family. Diversity is part of my DNA. My father, who is white, was born from German Jewish descent. My mother, who is black, is born from Haitian Catholic descent. And so what you have before you is a person that lived diversity throughout his whole life and got along with myself totally well. But I grew up in Brooklyn, very close to Prospect Park. In fact, Prospect Park was my backyard. And I remember very young, at the age of 9 in 1969, when I was riding through the park by myself on my bike, listening to the World Series of 1969 when the Mets, and they did win a World Series back then,
Yes.
on my bike. I knew the park very well. It was my backyard. And I grew up just a stone's throw away from PS 92 Playground, where I lived on Winthrop Street. So I understand the importance that parks plays to the importance of our lives. I love the job where I worked in Raleigh, and I did not want to leave. But I'd have to say, after meeting with the mayor, hearing his vision for New York, and his desire to have a park system that was equitable, innovative, healthy, and safe, he had me at hello. And I decided that it was time to move back to New York to help achieve one New York rising together. So I am back. I am a planner. But as a planner, I do look at parks very differently. Parks do not sit in isolation. There's an anatomy to a city, and a park system is vital to a healthy and prosperous city. Since they do not sit in isolation, they're connected to neighborhoods, to culture, to community identity. Planning and parks is about place, but it's also about people, and we have to work together to ensure we fulfill that vision for the entire city. So parks are more than green spaces. They offer different things to different people. For some, they offer spiritual, physical, social, and economic benefits. And it is my goal to help you fulfill that vision for an outstanding park system. My goal is to work with all New Yorkers in all boroughs, in all neighborhoods, to make the park system one that New York can be proud of for present and future generations. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Let me just, in the spirit of the diversity that Mitch exemplifies, I will now offer a few words en español. Nuestro gobierno está dedicado a asegurar que todos los neoyorquinos tengan acceso a áreas verdes limpias y seguras, sin importar dónde viven. Este departamento se encarga de cuidar 29,000 acres de terrenos públicos. El Departamento de Parques supervisa casi el 14% de esta ciudad. Y nadie está más calificado que Mitch Silver para inaugurar una nueva era de mayor acceso y parques más sostenibles. With that, we welcome your on-topic questions first.
Can you and the new commissioner talk a little bit about how you plan to balance waterfront parks? In recent years, the waterfront has been really opened up with the Parks Department, but also the need to protect neighborhoods from coastal storms and the fact that a lot of those parks were badly damaged during hurricanes.
I'm going to start, and then the commissioner can add erudition and insight. I think the notion of protecting our coastline, protecting our neighborhoods, being more resilient goes hand in hand with the development of green spaces along our waterfront. Look, the Bloomberg administration put forward a vision for resiliency, Everyone here knows I have no trouble disagreeing with the I had no trouble disagreeing with the administration when I thought they were wrong, and I had no trouble agreeing when I thought they were right. I thought they were right about the vision that included an emphasis on wetlands, an emphasis on dune restoration, a lot of the more organic approaches that I think help to make us resilient. So that certainly goes hand in hand with deepening our commitment to parks and coastal areas. I think the reality of today's life and government is we have to do a lot of things at the same time with the resources we have. So resiliency is going to run through everything we do, in parks, in city planning, in what the buildings department does, in everything we do. But we also know that we have a tremendous opportunity because of that mentality to take everything we're doing and make sure it is performing the work of resiliency. Please.
I agree with everything the mayor said. You certainly want to balance all the needs of the city and determine what is best moving forward. Clearly, resiliency is important to the city. It's important to almost every city in this country. And I firmly believe that I want to work with some of the other departments to see how we can leverage resources across the city to see how we can both protect our shores for resiliency, but also make sure we have resources for parks. So it's something I'm committed to doing, and it's something I'll look into further once I'm fully on board and can look at the specific needs of some of the issues on the waterfront. I can say I served on the Rebuild by Design jury, and as a result of the work that HUD is doing, very fascinated by some of the schemes that they're coming up with on how they can protect both New York and the entire region from resiliency. Over 2/3 of the population that are vulnerable live within a half mile of the floodplain, so certainly we have to balance those needs against the critical needs of neighborhood parks throughout our city.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, as you know, there are a number of controversial park policies left over from the prior administration. Privatization of a number of spaces, including Union Square Park, and especially on the maintenance and operation side.
Yeah, we, first on Union Square, I have to be straightforward and say I don't know all the details. We are reviewing the situation, and we'll have more to say on that soon. On the bigger issue, it's a conundrum that we have to be honest about. We are not only faced with a bigger governmental challenge because of what's happened to our economy, what's happened to the federal government, and the lack of commitment to our cities. We're faced with an immediate fiscal challenge because of the open labor contracts and the unpredictability of both state and federal budget dynamics. So, you know, I've tried to be very sober about only making commitments I knew we could follow up on until a lot of these issues are resolved. So that leads us to the question, what can we do with the resources we have? And where is it appropriate to engage outside resources? There are some cases where it is. But I think the standard we set is that we have to have the maximum public benefit whenever we're engaging private resources. And if we don't get that benefit, we're not willing to proceed. I think that's a profound difference from the approach of the previous administration. So there, whoever it is, thank you. So we have to create financial sustainability for our parks. And again, sometimes there'll be ways of working with private partners, but it has to be on the public's terms. Yes.
There have been some proposals to force parks that get millions of dollars in private donations to their conservancies to share with their less prosperous other parks. Would you support those proposals? Would you make it mandatory for central parks?
I'm sure you'll have a good time talking to the author of that idea, who's sitting right there, Senator Squadron. I think it is an important and promising idea. I've said all along, we have to recognize the inequalities in our parks, like so many other parts of life in New York City, and we have to address them. I think Senator Squadron offered a very productive and creative idea. How you specifically engineer something like that has to be worked on with the stakeholders involved. You know, sometimes when a good idea is offered, people rush to the assumption that it will be imposed without dialogue. We believe in having a real dialogue with the stakeholders to figure out what will work. But I can tell you what I don't like. I don't like the status quo. I don't like the notion there's a lot of parks in our city in less advantaged neighborhoods that aren't doing well. And the parks aren't those clean, safe places we want them to be, and we have to find ways to address it, and I think the senator offered an important contribution to that dialogue. Yes.
Just following up on that, I'm wondering if the new Parks Commissioner can weigh in on that. Just the concept even of trying to
Well, first, the first step you want to find out is that you have legal authority to actually make a proposal like that happen. But certainly it is a goal, and I agree with the mayor. We want to first start with a conversation to find out how we can ensure that all parks benefit. There are probably many ways to get there, but I think we can all agree to have a successful park system in our city, it has to be a great park system throughout the entire city. So I'm going to start with a conversation. Bring the conservancies to the table. I'm sure there are many different ways we can get to the same goal, but I do believe it is a good goal, but there are many avenues to get there. The 21st century requires creative ways of funding. Places across the country are trying to find different models about how to fund parks. And so the status quo is not working. I agree with the mayor. But there are many examples that we're going to explore, sitting down with the conservancies to find out how do we start to fund and maintain parks in the 21st century.
I want to pick up on the goal point. The goal is a more equitable approach to our parks. And so let's start with what the goal of everything, what Commissioner Silver is going to work on, what I'm working on. A more equitable approach, meaning we can't have parks that are so underfunded in some of our least advantaged neighborhoods that people can't have a good experience there. And unfortunately, that is the case in many parts of the city. That's a status quo we won't accept. One of the most interesting ideas to be put on the table was the one that Senator Squadron put forward. We're going to sit with the conservancies and talk that through, and we're going to listen for other ideas too. No one has said that we're closed in this matter. We want to find a way to get this done. We don't have the illusion of a lot of new resources available in the here and now through the traditional budgeting process. So we've got to find other alternatives. We've got to look at every creative alternative, and we will work with the conservancies. We honor the conservancies. We honor what they do and what they've achieved. But we also have to figure a way to deepen the commitment to parks that aren't doing as well. I actually think when a lot of folks who do donate to parks see that there's a chance to help out other parks, get to know those parks and those communities and understand what their involvement could mean for a lot of people who don't have as much opportunity, I think you'll find a lot of people are excited at that opportunity to help and to be part of another neighborhood too, and that's the direction we want to go in. Yes?
Hi, Mayor. Greg Mocker, Channel 11. Is one of those options giving or leasing or selling land to developers?
Well, we believe parkland is sacred. And there's been a few proposals over time for private uses on parklands, and I've said we set a very, very high bar. They're fairly rare. Let's be clear about that. There's not that many instances, but we set a very high bar in terms of what the public needs in such an equation. So there are a few instances. I've been involved with Brooklyn Bridge Park, for example, which I think is one of the most exciting things happening in parks in the city. 80 new acres when it's fully built out. I think it's going to have a transcendent impact on a whole swath of Brooklyn. There is some private sector development in that park to sustain what is a very costly park because it's built over the water in some places. I think that's fair so long as it's only the development needed for sustainability and so that it supports a lot of additional acreage for the entire public to use. So there may be situations like that we can feel good about, but the bar is set very high. Well, Flushing Meadows, I said clearly that we did not accept the original proposal, that it was not giving enough back to the community. It's as simple as that, a proposal was put forward, I would add, by a very well-endowed organization that didn't give the community enough back in terms of replacement parkland or sustainability for the Flushing Meadows Park. It's a 1,000-acre park. It's not in the greatest shape. If there had been enough in that plan to truly help the people of the community and the sustainability of that park, that would have been worth serious consideration, but the plan put forward didn't do that. Obviously, the folks behind that plan have now moved on to another location. It's about setting the bar high and putting the public's interest first in any such equation. Yes.
Yes, welcome, Commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm sure you both know that before you arrived today, an army arrived here of workers, and they cleaned this park to the nines.
Good.
I hope you'll come back frequently because this is going to help. But seriously, there isn't enough staff and enough money to maintain the park at this level every day. And I represent Kansas Seward Park. I have a little list for you later. This park has a lot of needs. And
Thank you.
Important park.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you. We're on. So I saw you go first. Are you? Oh wait, media. I'm sorry. I thought she was media and she wasn't media. Are you media? No. Let me stay with media.
Horse-drawn carriage is a very controversial issue. To the new commissioner, what would you do moving forward about horses in Central Park and carriages?
Let me lead in and say, look, the position of this administration was made, first of all, before there was this administration, the vision was made very, very clear. It's something the public ratified in the election. We're moving forward on that vision. I emphasize we want to work with the existing stakeholders as we transition. I believe the electric cars, the replica old-fashioned electric cars, are going to be a great solution that can provide real employment opportunities, a clean alternative, and a more humane alternative. So that's the direction we're moving in. Obviously, the decisions around that have to do with a lot of stakeholders. City Council and others are part of that decision process before you even talk about the Parks Department. But that's the vision we're working from. Okay. Yeah.
LG Tower that's going to be constructed.
Oh, what? I'm sorry?
LG Tower.
LG Tower.
Like for wireless
What?
service.
Ah, okay. I was hoping you'd know the term.
no,
of
wait.
art.
No, LG, it's
It's going to be built in the Palisades in Jersey, and a lot of critics are saying that will take away some of the beautiful views when you go up to the cloisters, and you look at those views that are it'll take those away and it'll make them worse. Do you have anything to say about that?
I don't know about that one. I wish I knew the details. I don't. I'd be happy to learn about it and have something to say, but I don't know about it at this point. Do you know anything about this? You want to add? Okay, we are sharing our ignorance on this one. Off topic.
You going tonight to organize to conquer, somos uno. I would say somos ninguno.
Somos. Continue.
To accomplish there, that's a waste of money.
Well, you're leading the witness, counselor. I've been going to this Somos conference for years. I think it represents an important platform to talk about issues related to the Latino community, and that's what I'll do. Sally.
Last Tuesday, the City Council and your Health Commissioner announced an expansion of the Braden restaurant.
Yes.
Restaurant line, rather. And these were announced last summer by Have you had a change of heart since your administration members were there this morning?
Oh, I've had a change of heart because there's a new administration, meaning I think we're going to do a lot of the other things that have to be done to fulfill a larger vision of fairness towards our small businesses. So the original actions taken by the City Council that are being talked about today, I think, are good in and of themselves because they help to clarify fairness in the grading process. I think that's a good thing. I think the grades per se are a good concept, but they lacked fairness and consistency. And we heard from innumerable small business owners about instances they had of unequal treatment. And I think the action taken by the council will help to address that. But that is one piece of a much bigger equation. That's what I was trying to say last year, and I believe it's still today. We have to do a lot more to change the orientation of city agencies from a punitive one to one of educating and working with small business. And that's something you're going to see a lot more on from us in the next few weeks.
Mr. Mayor, the citywide system is clearly struggling financially.
Yes.
How severe are the problems to your knowledge, and what is the city doing about it?
I don't know the chapter and verse. I know it's a serious economic situation. I know that I certainly value City Bike. I think it's proven to be very helpful to a lot of people in this city, and our goal is to expand it farther out into the city, into the outer boroughs. But they do have real economic challenges that they're facing. Our Transportation Commissioner, Polly Trottenberg, is going to work with City Bike, looking for ways that we can be, in collaboration with them, find ways to make their operation more efficient, more effective. And we want to see them succeed. Hold on a second.
Given that it's become, a transportation alternative for so many people, is it something the city would put money towards?
At this moment, that's not in our plans. We want to see what we can do to help them back on their feet using other methodologies.
Governor Patterson this morning said that you were being intellectually dishonest with regard to tax making. Do you have any comment to that?
I feel the same way I felt from the beginning. The plan that we put forward to tax folks who make $500,000 or more for pre-K and after school was based on very clear precedent. The Safe Streets, Safe City tax from the 1990s, the tax that was put forward by the mayor after 9/11, Mayor Bloomberg after 9/11 to stabilize the city's dynamics. There's a clear precedent for the city of New York declaring that it has a particular need, getting approval from Albany to raise revenue from our own people. I believe that made sense all along. I still believe it's the single most sustainable revenue source. By the way, look at those two examples I gave. Safe Street, Safe City was a 7-year plan. It played out over 7 years. It lapsed on time. It made a profound impact on safety in this city. If you think this is a safe city today, and it is, that was the first giant step towards safety. This city got back on its feet after 9/11 because Mayor Bloomberg was right to ask for the ability to raise the revenue we needed to stabilize our finances and move forward. So I think what I propose is very much in that vein, and that tax, when Mayor Bloomberg proposed it, was a 3-year tax that lapsed on time as well. So Mayor Dinkins proposed a 7-year tax, lapsed on time. Mayor Bloomberg proposed a 3-year tax, lapsed on time. So I think there's such a clear precedent for it and for the reliability of it that I still think it's the right way to go. I understand the dynamics in Albany, and we've said repeatedly, if we get the resources we need in a reliable fashion, we can move forward with full-day pre-K for every child in the city and after school for every middle school student. That's what we're preparing to do right now. We've got a lot going on. We've got a lot that we have to deal with each day. A lot of unexpected things come up each day, and we make sure that we deal with all of the people's business, and we make sure when we get here we are fully prepared. Sure. Marcia, I think the important thing here is when you get elected to do a job like this, responsible to 8.4 million people, with every conceivable subject matter that we have to deal with, my job is to do the best for the people. I don't get hung up about some of the things I see in the media. My job is to deliver for the people, to choose the best available people for each role, and this is an area where I'm so proud that we've found great, talented people for so many city agencies to move policies that foster equality and fight against inequality, such as the paid sick leave bill yesterday, which I was honored to have as the first piece of legislation I signed. That's what matters. The rest is noise. What matters is getting the job done for the people.
Going back to City Bike for a second, you mentioned that city funding is right now not on the table. Can you talk about what options you're looking at to provide more funds to City Bike?
Well, what Commissioner Trottenberg is doing is sitting down with the folks from City Bike and saying what would help in terms of the way things are structured now, what would help you financially with all the other possibilities that may be there. And we're open to any proposal they have. Again, at this moment, city budget money is not on the table, but we're open to other alternatives that might be helpful.
Federal funding?
If we can find that certainly would be great. But the point is, I think it's a valuable service. It's proven to be a success. We want to see it continue. We want to see it expand. And we're going to work with them to find alternatives that will help get that done. Again? Again, I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not getting into details because those discussions haven't begun in earnest.
I'm not a fan of congestion pricing. Gridlock Sam today has unveiled a plan to not only have congestion pricing controlled in certain bridges. What's your position on it? It's still not like congestion.
I think he's a really smart guy. I really do. I've talked to him about his plan. There's some interesting and innovative ideas in it. The plan that was put forward, I think it was 2008, I did not agree with. I didn't think it was fair to the outer boroughs. And right now, we're obviously working on a number of other priorities. But I do want to say that plan, at least that Sam Schwartz put forward, was an honest and positive contribution to the dialogue, and I look forward to talking to him more about it. I've never been in favor of tolling the East River bridges.
It was about a month ago now that you were on Staten Island talking about your plans to look into Hurricane Sandy recovery efforts, maybe make some changes even longer since you first brought it up in your State of the City address. Where are you on that? What can you tell New Yorkers who are, waiting to hear more about how Hurricane Sandy recovery might change, speed up?
I think there's a lot that we're going to put forward in the coming days. I think it's simple and obvious that a lot of people are hurting. They haven't gotten the support they need from government. We have to do a lot better. We are going to change the structure of the city's approach. We're going to change some of the personnel. We're going to change some of the procedures. You're going to see a very different look when we unveil it. We can't leave people behind in this process. We have to reach out to folks who've been affected much more consistently. And that's what you'll see when we make our announcement. Thank you, everyone.